Hey,
Welcome.
Patrick.
How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Well, I'm excited. We are season one, episode three.
Yes.
We've had some really good feedback
Yep.
on the previous two episodes. And I said, as long as we're getting good feedback, let's just keep going,
That's right.
right? And the
Yeah.
audience will let us know.
I had two random people who I know but don't know well,
Yeah.
but I've known for a long time, mostly from my previous serving on staff at New Beginnings, who came up to me last week after church in the foyer specifically to tell me that they were really enjoying the podcast and thanked us for doing it. So, I mean, that alone is a huge win. So to the two of you that came to me at church and to everyone else that's watching, thank you so much. We hope that you'll continue to not just be entertained, but I hope glean something from this, because that's kind of the idea, right?
For sure. And as Adam is going to become accustomed saying over these podcasts, like, subscribe. That's how we want to get the word out that we're doing these podcasts. So help us share.
And it
Good
matters.
news.
I've kind of been blown away by how much that matters.
Yeah.
How much it impacts who actually sees the podcast, especially on YouTube.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch it grow.
Yeah, for sure.
And the episode today is going to be exciting.
Why? Why, Patrick?
Well, we have some stories that resonate with us, and we wanted to share those today. But before we jump in and share those stories, we want to introduce the TRN team real quick.
Yes.
Because a lot of these stories involve the TRN team. So we want you to become accustomed to who these people are. So give a quick introduction.
Yeah, I would wager that probably 97% of the stories are going to in some way involve our local staff. So when we started the Roots Network in 2017 and moved to Rwanda in 2018, we started with 4 staff members, 2 in Rwanda, 2 in Burundi. In Rwanda, it was Ezekias and George. Ezekias and George are father and son. Pastor Ezekias is pastor of Pifa Church. George is his son, who is just a leader in every right, but his heart and passion in the main capacity that he serves for the Roots Network is training rural pastors. In Burundi, Amable and Eric are both pastors, each of different churches, different denominations, and they work together in a very unique way in that they literally do almost everything together. Both of their wives are very involved, and the 4 of them together are their churches partner together on things, which is, kind of can be atypical for any culture, but certainly in East African culture. And they are church planting and disciple making machines. So those were our 4 original. And then since then we've grown. We now have a team of 12. 9 are staff members, and then 3 are what we call associates. Our staff are field coordinators. And then the other 3 are what we call field associates. They're supported by TRN, but we don't consider them staff yet. But they work alongside certain members of our staff. So the rest of our team in Rwanda is we have Johnny and Francine, a young married couple who've been with us since about 2019. They started out as our language instructors and just kind of bridged that gap. It just made sense. And their areas of focus are church planting, rural church planting, and marriage and family. So they have kind of 2 separate ministries, but the marriage and family sort of bleeds into both. They've created a YouTube channel. They've got online stuff. They do marriage seminars. They do marriage counseling. They're training up other leaders that come through their program to be counselors and leaders. And they've also planted the gospel Kayumbu Gospel Church down in the Niamata Bugesera area. And that has grown from 8 believers from an outreach in 2019 to well over 100 believers and several hundred children that meet in 10 to 12 home groups weekly in Rwanda. They're doing a great job, and God has really transformed that community through their hard work. Then we have David Israel, who is the youngest staff member on the Roots Network, but that really doesn't have any kind of a reflection on his ability to be just a force for the kingdom and a leader. His focus is with students, primarily college students, but also high school students. So he and our field associate Glory, they spend a lot of time on college campuses doing like outreach events, and then they form Bible study groups within college campuses, and they've raised up leaders. So they've got students and graduated students that are now leading groups in different universities around the country. And then we have Briscoe, who is our other field associate that works with Johnny and Francine, and his heart and passion is children and families. So he runs the student ministry, the children's ministry at Kayumbu Gospel Church, and he works with all the parents, teaching them how to disciple their kids. And then Claire works she's our water coordinator, and so she works with Ezekiel and George and really helps navigate the engineering side of water wells to make sure that for longevity's sake that they're built in such a way and that grass is planted around them in such a way that when it rains they don't get overwhelmed. Yeah. And then last but not least is Fabrice. Fabrice is a field associate he's in Tanzania. He's Burundian. He was raised up under Amable's discipleship through Amable's church. And they, in the last year or two, sent him to plant churches in Tanzania because he grew up in Tanzania and has a real heart for the Tanzanian people. And he's doing a great job. So that's our team. You're going to hear a lot about them. We love them dearly. And I hope that our topic of discussion today is going to put a smile on their face, because when they hear the topic, they know what's coming.
Well, and I do want to point out, the staff has grown from 4 people when you first started, which I think is awesome and indicative of a healthy ministry.
Yes.
I think it's a growing team.
Yes.
And it's been awesome to watch over the last 8 years. And I do want to give a quick introduction to someone that we consider kind of like a planet that is going around the Roots Network, and the gravity of the Roots Network keeps him close. Yeah. And that's Dr. Patrick. So I met him on my first trip. And obviously I'm going to be connected to Dr. Patrick since I'm a Dr. Patrick as well. And,
right.
So it was just natural that we connected, and he's fantastic. He's about ready to graduate his pediatric residency, is staying in Rwanda to serve his people. And he helps when we do mission, medical mission, dental mission.
Yep.
He's always there serving, interpreting, and just fantastic support for the Roots Network. Yes. So you're going to hear some stories from Dr. Patrick.
For sure.
Well. So,
yep.
All right. So today, George is going to be kind of our focus.
George, you're in the hot seat today.
So
get ready.
George has one of the biggest smiles. So I know right now he is smiling.
But he's also very reserved and very kind of like, he's not a super emotive guy. So right. When he smiles, it's glorious, right?
So this is going to be fun. These stories hover around Africa time.
Okay. Africa time, which I'm going to let you explain what that is, and then I'm going to start with my story because I think that will lend some foundational context to your story.
Perfect.
Okay.
So time in Africa is relative. It's much different than how we manage time here in a Western culture. Me in particular, I manage my time down to 30-second intervals. Okay. So I'm on that end of the spectrum.
I'm learning this today,
right?
By the way.
Really?
I didn't know it was that specific.
It's that specific. So when you take someone like me and you transplant them into an honor shame culture where time is very relative and time is relational, it's a pretty drastic contrast. So that was one of the toughest things I had to get used to, was how they view time. And it created some interesting stories because of that contrast. Okay. So time is very relative. It's very relational. And you're going to see that, I think, in these stories.
100%.
Okay.
And I will just throw a disclaimer out there to anyone that is, that might be wondering, there's not one thing that you and I are going to talk about today that my team has not heard from me or like these conversations I've had with our team, these stories, I've told these stories in front of them. So like none of this should catch anyone by surprise. And again, I feel confident that they're laughing with us, not scoffing at us.
100%.
Okay. So the foundational story here is actually happened before we lived in Rwanda. I was the missions pastor in the beginnings, and I led my last mission trip as missions pastor in February of 2018. And we moved in July. So we were already there, moving and transitioning, but just for full disclosure, this happened before we were living there. But its applications continue as recent as yesterday. So we had been out on medical mission for like all day, and we were driving back. The team was on a bus. I think there were like 14 of us. We're driving back into Kigali, back to the hotel. We were supposed to have dinner at like 6:30. We had told the hotel we wanted to have dinner around 6:30. And I don't remember exactly what time it was. It was somewhere around between 5 and 5:30. It was in the afternoon. It was starting to get dark. You know, in Rwanda, it gets like 6:15. It's dark, like that, year round. And I was in the back of the bus with Connor, who is the other pastor at the church. He was leading the trip with me. And we were just talking and realizing that we had been informed by our team that we were out of meds and we were going to need more medications for tomorrow going back to the same place. And so what you really run the risk of with the way traffic is and everything and potentially getting a late start, and we had quite a drive if I remember correctly, is if you try to go get more meds in the morning, you really run the risk of getting tangled up, getting super delayed, which to our Rwandan counterparts is totally fine.
Correct.
But for us, that wasn't an option. So I was talking to Connor and I said, man, I'm not sure what to do. And he goes, well, why don't we just right now, let's just go and we'll just tell the bus driver to take us to a pharmacy, and we'll just, you, me, and Faber, my brother-in-law Faber, who is a doctor who was on the trip. He was like, we'll just run in with George and we'll go and just get it taken. He said, we won't even tell the team what we're doing. Shouldn't take long. So I was like, okay. So we talked to George. George tells the driver. We get Faber. We pull into like somewhere downtown. You know, there's just buildings everywhere, and there's like a shopping mall that there's a pharmacy inside. So we get up and we're like, hey guys, we'll be back in a few minutes. We're just going to run in and grab some stuff. So we go in and we walk into this pharmacy and showed the pharmacist, the list of meds, which was hefty. And when Faber walked behind the counter and went and sat down with the pharmacist to start going through the list, that's when I knew, I think we've made a mistake.
This is going to take a while.
This is going to take a while. So, and it did. It took a while. And I know that at least about 30 minutes in, I'm kind of pacing around. I'm looking at my watch, and I looked at Connor, and I was like, man. And he goes, I know this is taking a while. And I was like, this is what I was afraid of. And he goes, it's all right. So we kept pacing around, and I would say about another 15 minutes passed. So at this point, it's probably been about an hour at this point. And which means we're pressing up on dinner time. And it also means that the whole team who's had a very long day is just sitting on the bus.
Getting restless.
So I'm pacing, I'm looking at my watch, and George, sweet George, notices that I'm tense, and he walks up and he says, Adam, are you okay? What's going on? You seem anxious. And I said, yeah, I am anxious. This is really taking a lot longer than I anticipated. And he goes, it's no problem. He said, I can call the hotel. Don't worry about dinner. I can tell them that we need to make it later. And I said, I'm not worried about dinner, George. I'm worried about the 14 missionaries that have been sitting on a bus waiting for us for an hour. And he, with no hesitation whatsoever, he looked at me right in the face and he goes, they will not die. They are missionaries. This is mission. And I was just like, that's a true statement.
That is true.
And I immediately, all of my tension left, and we just wrote it out. And I mean, a few minutes later, it was finished. We got our stuff and we go and get back on the bus. And when we got on the bus, you could cut the tension with a knife. It was like, it was palpable because they were not loving it. And we go back to the back of the bus and just sit down like, okay, let's go. And Jason Bales, Connor's brother, who was on the trip, who is a dear friend of mine, I could tell that he was not pleased. And he was sitting right across from me. And I sat down and he just looked over at me and he goes, it took long enough. And I went, yeah, man, I'm really sorry. But let me tell you the conversation I just had with George. And I told the bus that story of you will not die, and everybody died laughing, and everybody like took a chill pill, and it was fine. And so from that day forward, like, you will not die,
right,
is like the mantra of everything. And I know that the stories that we've already shared from the previous podcast episodes and many of the stories that are coming are not going to demonstrate that that's the mantra, but it's always there. And I, even just yesterday with my daughter, Hannah, I don't remember what it was, but there was something that was very important to her, but it just wasn't going to work for me. And I looked at her and I was like, you will not die. She was like, yeah, thanks, Dad. So that's it, man. You will not die. It has an eternal, correct, cross-cultural, multifaceted, applicable, practical context.
So
the practical applications are endless.
Right. And you see, again, the dichotomy between a Western culture and an honor-shame culture. And in this instance, this wasn't a Western culture coming in and trying to change the honor-shame culture. This was George, in his profound wisdom, changing our culture and elevating it to a kingdom culture.
That's what I was going to say, like to a kingdom culture.
Right.
This is one, and this is one aspect of Rwandan culture and Africa time.
Yes.
That is actually, there's overlap with kingdom culture.
Right.
I'll make an argument later that that's not always the case.
Yes.
But in this context, it 100% was.
Because
you're missionary. This is mission. They are missionaries. They're not going to die.
Right.
They've been waiting for 45 minutes. They'll be okay. They're grown-ups.
And in all of that, what George has done over the last 8 years, George has 100% adapted to missionaries coming over. And what I mean by that is he really does count our time as valuable. So he really has taken that to heart, though. And when we go over and serve on mission, he really creates a schedule that maximizes our time there. And I think he really he's moved in our direction. And that has, I think, been another example of just how graceful George is and how humble and how kind he is.
And it's spread to our whole team. And here's what I would say to that is, yeah, I think it was, I don't remember, one of the last two episodes, we talked when we were talking about this culture stuff, and there was a point where we talked about that cross-cultural door has to swing both ways.
Yes.
Right? And I think I said something along the lines of, as the one that's inserting myself into their culture, it's incumbent upon, like, the responsibility falls heavier on me. Like, this ain't America.
Yep.
We're in Africa. Okay. So get over yourself.
Yep.
But there are certain contexts where that door does have to swing the other way, and they've got to learn how to be sensitive to our ignorance.
Yes.
Accommodating when necessary. And then I think to the point I hinted at earlier is when we were living there and working together, it was way more on equal ground, I felt. And so to kind of illustrate sort of what you're talking about and like how George has kind of assimilated to that, I want to be super careful because I don't want it to be like we went over there and we made them learn how to manage their time down to the minute. Like that's not what we're talking about. But I was living over there as the director, and for lack of a better term, as their boss, and which that's not really how we operate. It's very like relational, but we have a weekly team meeting in person in Rwanda. And we meet at a coffee house, a coffee shop, because it's like a good middle point for all of us. And when I first got there were like the first few times that we met, like not one single time did a meeting start on time. In fact, they were often significantly delayed because the team would just kind of trickle in, and after about the third time, I mean, I'm sure I addressed it like, hey guys, like the meeting starts at 10. I've got somewhere to be. I've got kids. And there was one day I made up my mind before I went, because we're on a WhatsApp group and everything. And I went to the coffee shop. I got there about 10 minutes early, got all my stuff set up, was ready to go. And at 10:20, the meeting was at 10. At 10:20, not one of my team members was there, and no one had communicated on WhatsApp. And I packed up my stuff and I left. And at like 10:35, I started getting text messages from the team like, "Hey, we're here. I thought we were having a meeting. Has the location changed?" And I responded and said, "Our meeting was at 10. I was there before 10, and at 10:20, no one was there, so I left because I have another meeting at 11:15, and I have this, and this." And I was like, "Sorry, like 10 means 10." And so the next meeting, we had a discussion as a team, and I used Matthew. I think it's Matthew 7. We talked about it the other day. I used Jesus's words about oaths.
Yeah.
This doesn't really have to do with oaths in this context, but I think the application of Jesus's lesson of like, you don't need to swear, you don't need to sign something. Your character and integrity as a follower of Christ should mean that your yes should mean yes and your no should mean no, and that should be enough. And so I believe that there's application in a context like this. Like, guys, like, why would, like, let your 10 a.m. mean 10 a.m.?
Yeah.
What is the point of having a time that we're starting if it's just like, well, I'll come whenever. I'll just get there when I get there. And so that is a bit of a mix of like my Western culture kind of like coming in and being like, look, in this context, you guys are going to have to lean a little bit more my way because that's just how this is going to have to work. But I do believe that there is a kingdom culture application there. And I don't think that's a stretch, but I welcome pushback if you disagree.
No, something that you said that really hit home with me was the TRN team has understood our ignorance when we come over as a mission team, because that is exactly what I was the first time I showed up in East Africa. I was ignorant of that culture. And I shared with you maybe in the first episode how that ignorance shamed a doctor that I was working with. It was unintentional, but that ignorance of culture ended up shaming that doctor. And that put a wall up and we lost communication. Well, when I came over on my first trip, and I think George understood that ignorance, and we had a story about time that I'll share in a second, but he he didn't take that ignorance as shame,
Right.
which was very humbling.
Because he's been given a cross-cultural context for it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. So he understood that cross-cultural context and was very humble in his response to me in this,
Sure.
this given situation. So let me tell you what this was. We were done again with a busy day of work. I mean, you're triaging hundreds of kids in these dental clinics. They don't have ergonomically dental chairs and, so your back is hurting. I mean, you're tired.
Yeah.
So we showed up to a restaurant. It took 45 minutes to put our order in. To a Western, missionary, team, that's already behind schedule. And then
When it's not just that you're behind schedule, it's also that y'all are exhausted. We've got another long day.
Yeah.
You already know, like, I'm not going to be in bed till midnight.
Yep.
Because I got to get back. I've got to shower. I've got to talk with my family. I've got to journal, whatever it is. So it's all building up, right?
It is. It's all, yeah, it is. It's a snowball effect.
Yes.
So you put the order in, and then you see all of the cook staff just talking with each other, like in a corner. And you're like, we just put our order in. And then for 30 minutes, they're talking and really not working on your order. And then you're like, what is going on? And being ignorant, we view that as disrespect. Like they're not respecting our time. That's our ignorance and how we view it. And I'm like elbowing you, like, can we get this thing going?
Like, what is going on?
So probably another 30 minutes goes by. And now, Adam's side is bruised because I've elbowed him so much. And finally, George steps in, similar to your story. And he's like, Mr. Patrick, are you okay? And, I'm looking at you and, I'm finally like, well, it just feels like it's taking a really long time. We've put our order in. We see the kitchen staff over here not working,
not kitchening,
not making our food. What is going on, George? Can you go talk to them? And he just, again, in that it's an emotional, look, but he's just looking at you and he's like, Mr. Patrick, you just need to relax. And this is a time that we can talk and get to know each other. And it's going to be okay. And I mean, immediately you feel like a centimeter tall, right? Because your ignorance has gotten exposed. And you realize that you've just wasted the last hour and a half worrying about time when you could have spent that hour and a half in a relational context, getting to know George.
Because you will not die.
Because we will not die. But I mean, these are really the extremes of
sure,
how you feel when you have a Western culture meeting up against an honor shame culture, and time is just one of those things that really shows the dichotomy.
For sure.
This is going to, I think, really hammer home this point, though, of the value of time and how we should, I think, look at it from a kingdom culture. One of the most enjoyable things I've ever done in Rwanda is sharing the Lord's Supper. Every time I go over, that is one thing that I have had our team do every time, was the Lord's Supper in Rwanda. So a lot of my memories just are engaged in those stories. The first time we went over, we were at a hotel, and before we went out on to serve that day, we had the staff get us some yeast rolls, sorry to say, and some, I think it was like mango juice.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was an open air restaurant. So you're looking out at the palm trees and the vegetation. And I got to do the lesson for the Lord's Supper.
And I think we were down in Butari.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, in Huye.
Yeah. I mean, it was like I was there just the other day. It's an incredible memory. And we gave the lesson of the Lord's Supper, and we were circled up. And 20 feet away, there were two staff members of the hotel staff. And we had the Lord's Supper, took the bread, took the juice, said our prayer, and then we were heading out. And George called our American George over, who George is our missions pastor at New Beginnings, and said the staff here at the hotel had some questions about what we were just doing. So George and George got to preach the gospel to this staff member who saw us taking the Lord's Supper. And how they left it was Rwandan George got this guy's contact information and was going to reach back out and schedule a time. Batari is about, 3 hours from Kigali?
Yep.
Okay. So we all go back to Kigali. We have our mission trip. We go back to America. That's all great. Well, we got a message from Rwandan George a couple months later that this individual had given his life to Christ.
Was this Wilson?
Wilson.
Yeah.
Wilson had been saved. But the story behind this was Wilson he moved to, so Batari is in the southwest part of Rwanda. Wilson moved to the southeastern part, and that was like 7 or 8 hours away by car from Kigali. It was a long way. George took one day and commuted all the way to southern Rwanda just to share the gospel with Wilson. So he sacrificed that whole day to go talk to someone. I am not sure I know one person in America who would block off their entire day, drive 8 hours just to meet with one person. It just seems so out of our context.
It'd be like driving to Galveston.
Yeah. To preach the gospel to someone. And it just really hit home with how someone sacrificed time for someone else. And I've just always been blown away by that sacrifice.
Well, and the thing that's really wild and that probably blows me away the most is that I am certain that George never one time viewed that as a sacrifice.
Thought twice about it. That's just what he does.
And he has continued and maintained a relationship with Wilson and continued to disciple him, and gives any time that he goes and visits him or meets up with Wilson, he always sends pictures and an update of how Wilson's doing. So, I mean, man, like, that's discipleship.
Yeah. It almost just leaves me speechless how sacrificial that is. And where I try to manage my time every 30 seconds and my schedule is just airtight. I don't leave any space in my day for something like that.
Well, and it's like when something like that comes up, it's like, I don't have time for this.
Yep. My schedule's too packed.
And that feels gross to say.
Yeah. It is the Western culture. And I can't thank George enough for his example in my life when it comes to that aspect of time. And I could be much better in my margin, in allowing the Holy Spirit to create that margin for kingdom service.
That's a strong takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess my challenge to our listeners is,
or our sending point.
Our sending point.
There you go.
Yeah.
Point?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that's, yes. So let's create a sending point.
Okay.
Okay.
I kind of like that even the sending points aren't like pre-scripted.
Yeah. No, this is
Kind of like getting there organically.
Yeah. Yeah. So the sending point today is God controls all time. We do not control time. God controls it. That is something that George has witnessed in my life. And I want to thank him for his testimony in that aspect of culture. He has done a good job of swinging that door both ways, where he has called us to be a little bit more flexible in our time. But he has also reciprocated that and been very respectful of our time when we're there. And I just think that is a really good example of someone who is viewing time in light of God's calling.
Well, can I add something in there that I wasn't really thinking? I mean, I've thought about this many times, but I wasn't thinking about it as we went into this conversation, but it just came to mind is, to your point, in this idea of like the door swinging both ways. And to me, the door swinging both ways is what happens when you're making it about the gospel and the kingdom of God, right? And you're not, if it's the door's only swinging this way, then you're focused on you and your culture. And if it's swinging this way, then they're focused on them and their culture. And I think when the door is swinging both ways, that's where you kind of enter into these areas where the aspects of our culture that illustrate kingdom culture and therefore are a kind of a beautiful illustration of what it can be. I think that's kind of where that harmony sits. And one thing that we didn't really talk about, you mentioned at the beginning, but like this whole idea of Africa time is like the explanation that I've been given over the years is that it's because East Africans, in this context, Rwandans, they just value relationship over time. Whereas, and yes, in a general sense, that is true. And then in a general sense, you could say the opposite of us, like that we value time over relationship. I push back on that a little bit because there's a little bit of that rubs on me because I'm like, I don't value time over my relationships. But I'm sure if you took a little fine-tooth comb and a magnifying glass, we'd probably... Anyway, the point that I'm getting at is, okay, so Americans are slaves to the calendar. We're slave to the clock.
Yes.
Okay. Rwandans are not. They put relationship. They've got it on. But what that means is the reason that someone may not be on time to a meeting is because they're in another meeting or they've run into someone on the way or whatever it is. And so that relationship is valued over the start time of this meeting. And I think that where I entered into that conversation was with this language to kind of, to your point, is what about your relationship with me? And that doesn't have to be me.
Right.
What about your relationship with the person that you're supposed to be meeting?
Yeah.
You're keeping them waiting. Like, do you value that relationship? But in our culture, you being late and not communicating with me communicates to me that my time is not important to you. I don't know that it translates like that as much in East African culture, although I know that there are certain contexts where, like, if you work at the bank or if you work for the president, or you work,
you're good.
Like, you
gotta be on time.
Africa time's not a thing, right? And it's funny. I had a conversation with a guy that I worked with when I was still working at the girls' school in Kigali. He's a Rwandan, but he's married to an American, and he's had a lot of experience around the world. And so I would always talk to him about this stuff because he very much has one foot in both. And I was like, "So Africa time, tell me more." And he goes, he said, Africa time, it's a thing. Like, we really do, like, we place an emphasis on relationship more than the time. He said, but it really has become something that we just use as an excuse to be late. And I went, I knew it. And he started laughing. And I said, man, that the worst thing you could have ever done is told me that, because now all bets are off. So, but all that to say, kind of back to what your point is, that's where that humility that you've talked about with our team and their willingness to kind of like be sensitive. So we don't bring teams over and go like this now, right? But at the same time, we still hey, take a deep breath. You will not die. We're working on Africa time. So everybody take a chill pill that's probably not going to go the way that it is on your agenda. But we're still having the conversation with our team on the other side of like, hey guys, they're only here for a week. They're tired. They spend a lot of resources and left family and friends to be here, took time off work. Let's honor their time. And there's just a beautiful harmony that comes from that. And I think that that's a good thing for both sides.
Yes, for sure. For sure. So sending point, again, God controls all time. And the question we need to ask ourselves today is, are we creating margin for God to work within our time frame? And I think, we won't go into it deep, but take a look at the, Bible story of the Good Samaritan and think about him walking along that path, taking time out of his day to care for someone, and then taking them to an inn. And then not only that, but coming back and paying for the, room rate.
When everyone else had just walked by.
So good story. Jump into that to reflect on, again, how God controls time. So, George, thank you for what you mean to the Roots Network and my life in particular. And he got everybody little, bracelets. And that's something that hangs on my nightstand, and so I get to remember George every day, and
that's awesome.
The example in my life. So thanks, George. So
that's great.
All right, so that's the sending point. We look forward to the next episode. We'll close in prayer, and then we'll let you guys get on with your day.
Okay,
how about that?
Yeah,
you want to lead us?
Yeah, sure. I'll pray. Heavenly Father, we love you, and we just praise you today for who you are. God, you are so good, and you are the author of everything, including time, which your word tells us that you exist outside of, and we can't really wrap our heads around that. But I think that just with the lessons that we've learned and the things that we've discussed today, just pray that you would, as we leave here, that you would just help us to just build some margin into our day for you and for those around us. Help us to see and seize the opportunities that you may be putting in front of us to just engage somebody with the love of Jesus. Your word tells us that the world will know that we are your disciples in how we love one another. And if we're too busy to even notice the guy that is confused, or the girl that is scared, or the person that is lost, or the child that is hungry, or any other number of scenarios, maybe just somebody that needs a little bit of encouragement, God, if we're too busy to even notice that, how can we possibly show them who you are? So just help us to have our eyes and our ears open and our hearts sensitive to the world around us that you have placed us in for your purpose. God, and we ask all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. All right, so we always try to end with our kind of Roots Network motto.
Yes. Our founding verse.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't find a natural segue today.
Yeah, I didn't tee it up for you
that's okay.
As well as I normally do.
Yeah, I do always want to land with this. Ephesians 3, 17 through 19. That's the verse that God affirmed for us that he was calling us to relocate, and to it's where we got the name for the Roots Network. And I think kind of like one of our taglines for this podcast has kind of just naturally been like, after we give the sending point, we pray, we just want to say, live well, like live well for Jesus, live well for those around you, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love. My screen just went blank. I need to have this memorized. So that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. So take that to heart, live well, have a great week, and we'll see you in the next one.
Stay rooted and stay safe. All right.